The Shroud of Turin is also known as the Holy Shroud. It's a linen piece of cloth bearing a faded image of a man's face. Some describe this image as Jesus of Nazareth and believe that the fabric is the burial shroud in which he was wrapped after the crucifixion. For the first time in 1354, the shroud was discussed, but then it was quickly denounced by the local bishop of Troyes as a fake. The Catholic Church currently neither officially recognizes nor denies the shroud's authenticity, and in 2013, Pope Francis called it an icon of a scourged and crucified man. In 1972, researchers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, analyzed the image on their fabric using the VP8 image analyzer. This device was originally developed to analyze images of Mars and the Moon. They found that the shroud image contained a perfect three-dimensional representation and correct contouring of the features of the face, arms, legs, and chest, unlike typical paintings or photographs. Of course, there are countless alternative theories, such as the one about the double agent hoax. It suggests that the Shroud of Turin is at the center of an elaborate hoax orchestrated by a double agent within the church to sow discord among religious factions and discredit the authority of the church. He orchestrated the creation and unveiling of the shroud. The idea is that the sensational revelation will lead to division and discord in the religious community, ultimately weakening the power and influence of the church. This would allow the emergence of a new, more malleable religious order, secretly controlled by powerful forces working behind the scenes. In the Gospel of Matthew, we find ancient evidence for the existence of the shroud in which Joseph of Arimathea wrapped the body of Jesus Christ. 3 centuries later, it's also mentioned in the works of Saint Cyril of Jerusalem. The shroud has been kept in the royal chapel of the Cathedral of Turin in northern Italy since 1578. The image on it is seen much more clearly in a black and white photograph negative taken in 1898 by the photographer Secondo Pia. In 1988, radiocarbon dating by 3 different laboratories determined that the shroud's material was from the Middle Ages, between 1260 and 1390. This test sparked its own debate, with knowledge scientists questioning its result on the grounds that the sample tested could be contaminated or may have been taken from a tape that was added later. Carbon dating experts and others using evidence from the shroud itself, however, deny these possibilities. Interestingly, in rejecting the earlier dating of the artifact, they are again unable to provide a reasonable explanation for the method by which the image was formed, despite all possible options being tried. Ultimately, the dating of the shroud continues to be questioned to this day, with research still ongoing. The Holy Shroud is a rectangular piece of cloth measuring approximately 14 feet 5 inches by 3 feet 7 inches. It is woven using the 3-to-1 method, a twill weave made up of linen fibrils. Its most distinguished feature is a pale, brownish image of a front and back view of a naked man with his hands folded across his groin. The pale straw yellow image appears to be of a man with a beard, mustache, and shoulder-length hair parted down the middle. He is well built and tall. Various experts have measured it from 5 feet 7 inches to 6 feet 2 inches. Reddish-brown stains were found on the cloth, correlating with the wounds in the biblical description of Jesus' crucifixion. The shroud was damaged in a fire in 1532 in a chapel in Chambéry, France. There are burn holes and scorched areas on both sides. 14 large triangle linen pieces and 8 smaller ones were sewn into the cloth by the nuns of Poor Clare to repair the damage. The story of the shroud. There are no definitive early historical records regarding the history of the shroud currently housed in Turin Cathedral. The burial cloth was owned by the Byzantine emperors, but disappeared during the sack of Constantinople in 1204. Historical records show that a shroud with the image of a crucified man appeared in the small town of Luray, France, around the years 1353 to 1357. It was owned by a French knight named Geoffroy de Charnay. In 1390, the Bishop of Troyes, Pierre d'Arcy, who had jurisdiction over the Church of Lourdes, wrote a long memorandum to anti-Pope Clement VII. Recognized as Pope by the Church in France during the Western Schism, stating that the shroud was a forgery and that a previous Bishop of Troyes, Henry de Poitiers, identified the artist who made it. After the 15th century, the history of the piece of cloth has already been thoroughly recorded. In 1453, Margaret de Charnay handed it over to the House of Savoy. In 1532, it suffered a fire in a chapel in Chambéry. In 1578, Emmanuel Philibert, Duke of Savoy, ordered the cloth to be brought from Chambéry to Turin, and it has remained in Turin ever since. Since the 17th century, the shroud has been exhibited in the chapel built for this purpose by Guarino Guarini. A fabric repair was done in 1694 by Sebastian Wolfar to improve the repairs of the Poor-Clares. Additional repairs were made in 1868. The shroud remained the property of the House of Savoy until 1983, when it was presented to the Holy See by the Umberto II, the last king of Italy. In 2004, a faint partial image of a body was found on the back of the shroud. The position of the Vatican. An interesting fact that speaks volumes but remains unknown to most people is how the Vatican's position on the artifact has changed over the centuries. That is why we took the trouble to extract the official statements related to the shroud since the 14th century. In 1389, the Bishop of Troyes sent a memorial to anti-Pope Clement VII in which he claimed that the cloth was artificially painted in an ingenious manner and that it was also proved by the artist that it was made by human work, not miraculously produced. Subsequently, in 1390, Clement VII issued 4 papal bulls authorizing the exhibit, but ordering it to be said aloud, to put an end to all deception, that the above-mentioned image is not the true shroud of our Lord Jesus Christ, but a painting or panel made to represent or imitate the shroud. However, in 1506, Pope Julius II reversed this position and declared the shroud authentic and permitted its public veneration with its own Mass and service. The Vatican newspaper El Osservatore Romano covered the story of Secondo Pia's photo in its June 15, 1898 edition, but did so without comment, and church officials generally refrained from official comment for nearly half a century thereafter. The first official modern association between the image on the shroud and the Catholic Church was made in 1940, based on the official request of Sister Maria Pierina di Micheli to the Milan Cura for permission to produce a medal with the image. Permission was granted, and the first medal with the shroud was offered to Pope Pius XII, who approved it. The image was then used on what became known as the Holy Face Medal, worn by many Catholics, initially as a means of protection during World War II. In 1958, Pope Pius XII approved the image in connection with the devotion to the Holy Face of Jesus and declared his feast to be celebrated every year on the day before Ash Wednesday. After the Pope's approval, Catholic devotions to the Holy Face of Jesus are primarily associated with the image on the shroud. In 1936, Pope Pius XII called the shroud a holy thing, perhaps unlike anything else. In 1998, Pope John Paul II called it a remarkable relic and a mirror of the gospel. His successor, Pope Benedict XVI, called it an icon written with the blood of a beaten man, crowned with thorns, crucified and pierced in his right side. In 2013, Pope Francis called her an icon of a scourged and crucified man. Pope John Paul II stated in 1998 that, "Since this is not a matter of faith, the Church has no specific competence to pronounce on these matters. It entrusts scientists with the task of continuing to investigate so that satisfactory answers can be found to the questions related to this fabric." Pope John Paul II showed that he was deeply moved by the image of the shroud, and his address in the Turin Cathedral on Sunday, May 24, 1998, he said, "The shroud is an image of God's love as well as of human sin. The imprint left by the tortured body of the crucified one, which testifies to the enormous human capacity to cause pain and death to one's neighbor, stands as an icon of the suffering of the innocent in every age." On March 30, 2013, as part of the Easter celebrations, an exhibition of the shroud took place in Turin Cathedral. Pope Francis recorded a video message on the occasion in which he describes the image on the shroud as "this icon of a man," and stated that the man of the shroud invites us to contemplate Jesus of Nazareth. In his carefully worded video statement, the Pope urged the faithful to contemplate the shroud with awe, but the video stopped short of confirming its authenticity. Let us know in the comments what you think about the development of the position of the Catholic Church on this matter. Scientific analysis. Secondo Pia's 1898 photographs allowed the scientific community to begin studying the shroud. Since then, a variety of science-based theories have been proposed, ranging from chemistry to biology and medical forensics to optical image analysis. It is impossible to list the hundreds of studies done over the years of this video, so let us know in the comment if you want us to make a separate video on this topic. The first direct examination of the shroud by a scientific team was undertaken in 1969 through 1973 to advise on the conservation of the artifact, specifying specific testing methods. According to one of the latest studies, the shroud contains nanoparticles that are not typical in the blood of a healthy person. Elvio Carlino, who is a researcher at the Italian Institute of Crystallography, claims that these tiny particles reveal that great agony of a victim wrapped in the funeral cloth. Professor Giglio Fanti of the University of Padua adds that they have a specific structure size and distribution. According to him, the blood contains high levels of substance called creatinine and ferritin. These substances are usually found in the blood of patients who suffer from severe physical trauma, including torture. That is, the presence of these biological nanoparticles during our experiments points to the violent death of a man who was wrapped in the Shroud of Turin, he says in conclusion. Subsequent examination of samples from the shroud also identified travertine, aragonite crystals, a rare type of calcite found near the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem, as well as 48 types of pollen, and 7 of which were from plants found in Palestine. If you like what we do, support us by subscribing to the channel.